All right, hello, Michael.
Hello, Michael.
So today we're going to be learning about airworthiness of an aircraft and what you need to have in your aircraft in order for it to be airworthy. So we have documents that we need in the aircraft. We have inspections that must be done on the aircraft. Required equipment that we must have for our flight, and when we have inoperative equipment, the process we go through.
Okay.
All right, so documents on the aircraft. What I like to use and what most people use is the acronym AERO-G. So first, the documents on the aircraft, we need the airworthiness certificate. We have this. This is always valid unless we do not comply with the inspections. So if we do comply with the inspections, then our airworthiness certificate will always be valid. We have our registration. We have state and federal. So state is 3 years. No, state is 1 year, my bad. Federal is 3 years. So we'll have to get those renewed for the state every 1 year, federal every 3 years. Our next are radio license. Now this is, so if you want to go international, if you want to take the plane international, the plane would need its own radio license. You would also need a radio license as a pilot. So there's two. The O, operating limitations. Operating limitations or the POH, you need to have that on board, or you can have an approved flight manual from the FAA. Need weight and balance. That would most likely be in your POH. And then our last thing is going to be our G1000 reference guide. Now this is for our aircraft. It's a book and usually located behind the seat. This is for our aircraft and all of the aircraft that use Garmin. You must have that on board. So I'm going to erase that so I have more room here. Grab this just in case. All right, so for inspections that must be done on the aircraft, we use the acronym AV8. So our first inspection that must be done, we must comply with our ADs. So ADs are airworthiness directives. There's two different kinds. There's recurring and there's a one-time AD that you must do for the aircraft. These are put out by the FAA for certain aircraft. Say that Piper has a, something was going wrong with the prop. So they put out every year you need to check the prop to make sure that it's airworthy and safe. Our next inspection is the altimeter. And ADs, so yeah, ADs are recurring or one time. The altimeter needs to be checked every 24 months. That is specifically for IFR. There's a couple other ones that are specifically for IFR. So that's every 24 months on the altimeter. We have our VOR, which is every 30 days. This is also specific to IFR. So every 30 days, if you want to use a VOR, it's got to be inspected or tested. So we'll change this I to a 1 here. So this is going to be 100-hour inspection. So our 100-hour inspection must take place if you are, if the aircraft is being rented or is for hire, basically. So here at NMC, our aircraft are for hire, so we have to go through a 100-hour inspection. Next inspection is the annual inspection. This is every year. Every aircraft that is flying must have an annual inspection, even ours. So that pertains to everyone. Transponder. Every 24 months. An ELT. Every 24 months. Or with the ELT, it's every 24 months. Now, if it's used for an hour, or has been used for 50% of its battery life, it does need to be inspected after that and replaced. And our last one is the static system, which kind of goes along with the altimeter. That is also an IFR inspection that we need to have done. All right. So after the inspections, we have to make sure that we have all the equipment on board for VFR. So we're going to talk about VFR day and VFR night flight today. We won't worry about the required equipment for IFR. So our acronym for VFR day flight required equipment is A, tomato, flames. You see that okay? All right. So the first thing we need for VFR day flight is altimeter. We need a tachometer, an oil pressure gauge, need a manifold pressure gauge, we need an altimeter, let's see what else here, temperature gauge for each liquid cooled engine, or each liquid cooled engine. So we have, or for all liquid coolants. All right, let's see, we have our oil pressure, oil temperature gauge as well. For our flame, we need a fuel quantity indicator for both tanks, so both wing tanks. So we need landing gear position lights. So on the Aero, if we're flying day VFR, those need to be working. Landing gear lights. And we also need anti-collision lights, or nav lights. Need a magnetic compass or a magnetic direction. What is it? Magnetic direction indicator. So I'm just going to put mag compass. All right, then we need an ELT. We also need seat belts. So that's 8 tomato flames. That's for day VFR flight. That's our required equipment for flying day VFR. Now with 8 tomato flames, at night, you need the acronym FLAPS. You need a little bit more equipment to fly VFR at night. So we need fuses, which is either one of the same set or 3 sets, I believe. But we don't have to worry about that here because we have circuit breakers, so that that counts as our fuses. We need a landing light. Now this is only if operating for higher. We're not operating for higher, then we do not need a landing light. They restate anti-collision, or nav lights. We need position lights. Actually, I believe I said I get those mixed up. Position lights, anti-collision lights.
I don't think so.
Okay. And then we need a source of power in the aircraft. So we need this on top of 8 tomato flames to fly at night in VFR conditions. All right, so our last topic here is what do we do if we'll use our anti-collision lights are inoperative and we want to fly day VFR. So what we'll do, we'll use the acronym M, Niner, P, TAS. So the first thing we would do is if NMC had an MEL, we'd look in the MEL. Which an MEL is basically showing what can be inoperative and what can't be inoperative on that aircraft. And those are put out by the, so if NMC did have them, it'd be put out by NMC and approved by the FAA. However, we do not have one. So we would go right to 91205. Now, I forgot to mention, required equipment is 91205. So that's where you can find the required equipment list that I just gave you. So we'd look, after the MEL, we'd look at 91205. When we saw anti-collision lights were on 91205, so technically we could not fly. Let's see. After that, we're going to look at the POH, the kinds of operations list in the POH. We're going to look at our type certificate data sheet. You can find that on the FAA for your aircraft, FAA.com, or the FAA website, and you can look at the type certificate data sheet for that aircraft. ADs, airworthiness directives, which we also can find on the FAA's website. We make sure we're complying with those, and then safety. We make sure that the flight is, you're able to fly the flight safely. So that's the last step after all this. So after you do all this stuff for your flight, and you find that your aircraft is airworthy, you go out and do a pre-flight, and you're good to fly. Thank you.